0, 1. Let's get started.
Well, he came back. Ryan Mayo, author. He left me halfway through last time.
It's taken me a month and a half to answer my doorbell, but I'm back. But it's a bit colder now, as you can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, jumper. Yeah, so you'll be my first two-parter. On it. It's live.
Yeah, we're live.
You'll be my first two-parter on the podcast. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, Ryan, author now of 2 books.
Yeah.
You were author of only 1 book when we spoke last time. Probably in the process of it. So, The Lost Hero.
Yeah.
And Fault Line.
Yeah, I've got copies of them here ready for you. This is The Lost Hero. Was it was a short novella. As I found out through all my research that if it's less than a certain number of words and characters, it's classed as a novella. That was really the first book that I wrote, and obviously I spoke about it in part 1. The inspiration as to what I got behind it, with spending lots of breakfasts and lots of chats with all the veteran friends of mine, and my time in the forces. The connection between me and my son, him being a soldier as well, and all these things that came into The Lost Hero. And when I did finish writing it, I still felt there was a lot more to tell. And I started the idea of having a family of military families. With my son being a soldier, my father wasn't in the army. My granddad was in World War II. My great granddad was in World War I. But there was a disconnect between those generations. But I thought about having a military legacy within families, and there's a lot of families out there that are service orientated. I know people where their brother might be in the Navy and their cousin would be in the Army, or their uncle was in the RAF. So they've all got a military bond, and so I kind of my brain was firing on all cylinders, and I was thinking, there's lots of stories to tell, and so I started thinking about the family dynamics and putting different family members in. And the next book I came up with was it's set now in a modern era. And I've gone with the niece of one of my characters from the first book, Sarah Clark. There's a female lead in the character. You're one of the women that inspire me with everything that you do, Gina. But obviously, it's quite emotional for me because my sister passed away a few years ago. She had a heart defect and she died from muscular dystrophy. But her strength of character and courage and resilience, has always been a major part in how she lived her life. And obviously, lots of other women in my life, my mum, my wife, my 3 daughters, my granddaughters, they're all fiery characters and spirits. And I wanted to embody the female in the military, because you don't tend to see a lot of military fiction with female leads. And I thought that's where I wanted to, delve into that aspect of it, and that's where I came up with Fault Line. Obviously, it's called Ghost in the Woods. It's the lead character is Sarah Clark, where she's out in Eastern Europe doing some humanitarian patrol work, and their patrol gets ambushed, and she's obviously left alone, stranded, and there's a survival aspect of her having to, while she's being escape and evasion, and while she's being hunted by a character who has got history in the family, because I've now got a whole series of books in my head with the Clark legacy, and they're all, in it all, I've got thing, and obviously having published this book, I've dedicated it to my sister, but I also dedicate it to all my female inspirations that are part of you, my mum, my wife, my daughters, and yourself, and all female soldiers out there that are integral and play a major role in the British forces these days. So it's I put it out. I published it last week. It's out for publish, and it's and it's already getting some good reviews. Those that have a few friends of mine that have picked it up already and have read it. Obviously, I know you've got your copies; they're in the post, so hopefully you'll get the time to read them at some point. And it's I know you're way busier than me, but they're on their way, and so it's out there. That story's out there, and I've got more stories in the thing. I'm now on my third book, which I've started to write now, where I delve a little bit darker into the post leaving the forces side of things. With suffering, PTSD, dealing with and I've taken my own personal stories from this one. Part of the book is growing up in Peacehaven. Me climbing the cliffs, being an absolute adrenaline junkie as a teenager. Going in, I've gone a bit wayward, and I've made the main character of my book. I'm going to have him as a Royal Marine, which is really difficult for a para to say, but bootneck.
Yeah.
But yeah, because obviously this is my stories. I want to incorporate all aspects of the military. It's not. I'm not just trying to focus on the army. So it's a lot of research, a lot of talking to a couple of bootnecks down the pub and on my breakfast chats that we have on a Saturday morning. But it's exciting times. I'm actually really enjoying this moment writing. And as I said to you earlier, it's a skill that I never had growing up. English was never my forte, but I'm able to walk my dogs with my microphone and dictate into my phone as I'm walking what my characters are going to be like, what the story's going to do, and then obviously I just download it up and then reformat it and use that and then put it into appropriate paragraphs and sentence structure and chapters. And it's I'd never been able to do this 5-10 years ago because my literary skills were shocking as a young man growing up. I spent most of my time in a pub pouring pints, and my computer skills were pretty much putting what my sales of beer were and ordering beer online. But now I'm able to, tell my story. I've always had the stories. I think they've always been there. They always say that everyone's got a story, and it's just a really good time in my life at the moment. I'm really getting the creative juices are flowing. It's
and I think we were talking before we record about technology, how it's changed. So I've never been particularly a great reader, even when I was on operations and there was nothing else to do but read. I would still not be interested in picking up a book, and maybe that's just how my mind works. But now with technology, like we were talking, you go around the park listening to your book and writing it, which is great. And I use Speechify now to go through, like I not edited but gave suggestions to a friend's book, Beyond the Ice, and I would never have been able to read that 300 pages without Speechify, and I was able to really help and engage someone, which in the past that probably would have took me about 2-3 months, but instead it took me probably about a week walking around the park every day to get information back.
This is something that I'm looking into as well, is obviously converting my books into audio books. It's obviously I have got a face for radio, so I don't know whether or not my voice comes across well enough or whether I can dictate. But obviously, because I do a lot of stuff with blind veterans, I've obviously started, like yourself, listening to audio books now a lot more, because you can listen when I'm driving to work. I can listen to an audio book, and it gives you so much more depth, instead of being able to sit down and read. And I know one of my mates at work, he downloaded the Kindle version of my book, and he was reading it while he was at work. Instead of working, he was reading my book, and he goes, "I actually didn't get any work done that day because I ended up just reading the book." I was like,
that's a good sign, isn't it? So the first book I ever read without cheating, And by cheating, I mean I get a bit bored in the middle and flick a few pages or flick to the end, see if the ending's any good. Was actually maybe a bit embarrassing, but was Bravo 20, and that's probably where it inspired my military sort of reading and that type of thing. And I think with your books, as we were talking with Lost Hero, it touches on reality because you've researched the history of it.
Yeah.
And it brings in your time within the military, so it makes it like a really proper military feeling book, although it is fiction, but based on true facts.
Yeah, I mean, it's fiction based on true facts. And I mean, my second book, Fault Line, is really just pure fiction. It's and it is very much.
I don't know. I could see similarities in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's similarities in in Bravo 20 when you look at it, because it is like an escape and evasion thing. I mean, that was one of the first military books I picked up as well, because military books weren't fantastic in the 90s and 20s.
It was the first one that was written, wasn't it? And it was about the SAS essentially, and it caused a lot of hoo-ha. It still does to its day, because it revealed secrets and stuff. And that's why when we're in, we now have to sign all the time Official Secrets Act nearly every day to say we won't write a book. But people still seem to be doing it, which is why the fictional side's quite unique. Bearing in mind you've got a military background, because if you look at some of the fictional books that the writers have, I'm trying to think of a lady who writes about female spies, and she's got no military background, or at least I don't think so. Maybe just doing the same.
Someone jokingly said to me the other way, "Have you ever thought about doing a romance novel?" And I went, "Do you know me?" I mean, my wife gets surprised if I turn up with flowers. It's more like, "What have you done?" Type thing. And it's but when it comes to romance, I was like, I could never write a romance novel. I went,
you've got to pick your lane, haven't you?
Yeah, it's what I know. It's what I know. With my knowledge of the forces, and obviously all of my friends, veteran friends, and all my ex-muckers, there's a plethora of wealth of knowledge and stories out there anyway, and it's an amazing experience when you're listening to the stories. As I said in part one, a couple of months back, when I go out and I listen to Fred and Bill, and Bill, he served in the Falklands, and he was on the Navy, and he was on the HMS, the ship that got hit by the Exocet missile from the Argentinians, and he too suffers from dementia. He can't remember what he had the day before or who he met, and and every day he re-meets us, and he kind of has to recall who we are every week. But his vivid memories of the Falklands are crystal clear. They're cemented in his brain. And then I talked to Fred and his time when he was in Omar because obviously he was the signaller, and he went through the ranks from private to major, and it just when you listen to all these stories and the characters that they experienced as well with their fellow soldiers and comrades, that were in there, and everyone's got 1,000 stories in them, and it's just great that I'm able to, and I do get their permission as well. I don't just go, "Oh yeah, I've heard a story on the right." I say, "Well, do you mind if I use a little bit of that?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, crack on," So it's always, and that's the main thing. It's getting permission. You hear people that write these stories about someone else, and they've got no permission, no right to actually write that story, because it's not their story. So I've always found it quite personal that you make sure if I'm going to use a part of someone's life, I say to you, "Do you mind if I take excerpts of that story and put it into mine, in my next book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's fine," and it's, and that's a key thing. I know that some people that I know from being on some of these authors groups now, they're writing stories about, they said, "Oh, I've started writing a bit, but my friends got really, really funny with me because I'm using their story," and it's like, did you ask permission?
Well, it's not your story to tell, is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
mean,
and
you
it,
know,
I thought
I
you've got to be
just
careful, isn't it?
yeah, and I look at I look at yourself, when looking at what you've achieved in your lifetime, and it's like and you've said you've been sat on a book for how long now? It's
About 10 years, and
yeah,
10 years of my life in the Green Army, and I think it was seeing your book being published, seeing how technologies come on, and then sort of going, yeah, I just need to. And I think it was the fear as well for me, the fear that for me nobody wants to read a book about a female in the army.
yeah.
Um, Maybe that's my inner
I,
fears, and
also,
putting it
I
out
think,
there and
I
no
mean,
one buying
I've
it.
always had I've made the point on a couple of group chats that I've been on with other, we're classed, I suppose you're called an indie author, so you're an independent author, self-published, doing it all yourself. And some people are going, oh, no one's reading my book. And I'm like, if one person reads it and one person sends you a review or says, I really touched me, that made me cry, or I found it so emotional I couldn't put that book down, you've succeeded.
Yeah,
It's the same as anything else in life. If you just can reach out and just change or get the perception and get gratitude from one person, that's a win. So I look at every day. I kind of look on Amazon to see how many books I've sold on Amazon, and sometimes don't sell a single book. But the flip side is that I've got, because I'm selling my soul on Facebook and Instagram, as you've seen. But
don't we
but
all?
but you get someone that friend or a family, and they say, "Oh, can I buy your book?" And you sign it, and you take it into them, and then they come back, and then they go, "Oh my God, I started reading your book. It's fantastic." And you think that's all you need. It's even if even if only a few people get to read it, it's there. I mean,
Yeah,
you can go through big publishers. And I did a lot of research on publishers, and they want their pound of flesh.
yeah,
And, yes, there is I think the statistics were that out of all the people that are publishing books and out there, even the big top publishers, only about 4% of their income is done on the big bestsellers. 96% of the stuff they publish doesn't sell more than 100, 200, or even 300 books, and they don't make any money, but they bank all their money on the big sellers. Or your J.K. Rowling, your Stephen
yeah,
King, Dean Koontz, Andy McNabb, Billy Bingham, all the big names and that lot that will sell a book because they've got gravitas behind them, and that's what they bank their money on. And then that kind of bankrolls them to, obviously there might be a secret gold New York Times or bestseller out there that's independent, but and I tell you to people, doesn't matter. Just if as long as it's your story, you're putting it onto paper, and if one person reads it and they go, absolutely loved it, then to me, I'm like, that's a win. It's
yeah.
uh,
And it can be quite cathartic, can't it? Even if it's not your story. So I know you said Fault Line is dedicated to your sister,
yeah.
and I remember when your sister passed away, and it's always an awful time, grief. But did you find any comfort in solace in, writing a physical book that was dedicated to her?
Yeah, it really did it, because obviously I was using, her. I felt, she was there with me as I was writing it. Every time I was writing a part where there's lots of grit, determination, endurance, and courage. I was delving deep into how my sister was, and and what she was like when she was going through her illness, and even with her final days. It was. I mean, I still remember the day she passed. I was in Greece up a mountain. It was.
Mm.
And that's when I got the phone call from my brother, and it was. And it's just one of those things. I just find it's really helped me focus and make sure, gave me more determination to actually finish the book as well. And and my next one, obviously, it's more kind of like on the aftermath of the forces. So and I'm drawing in on my own personal experiences. So it gives me more drive to actually complete it. So and it's
Yeah.
and as I said earlier, I'm loving the journey. It's and say if one person reads it and enjoys it, then that's good enough for me. Obviously, my mum likes it.
At least you've always got one fan.
I've always got one fan in my mum. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
still made a pay for a book though. No. But it's So I mean, that was it, and that's pretty much what I've done with the writing. It's and it is hard as well because obviously I'm still working full time. This is never going to be my income. This is just more. I'd say it's a hobby, but it's a hobby I love doing. I've got loads of other hobbies that I do. Some annoy my wife. Quite building models is one of them. So when I build a model and she's like, "Where are you going to put that?" And I'm like, at the moment I've got like a big box of books under the stairs, taking up loads of space for when people order them and I can send them out. It's so
Yeah.
all my
I've got a box over there similar.
all my hobbies seem to really annoy my wife. I think the only
Yeah.
even when I play golf and I'm not and I'm out of the house, I'm still annoying her because I'm out playing golf for 5 hours.
Yeah. Instead of hanging that picture that you've been sat there for 2 years or so.
I've been a good boy this morning. I put the washing up on the line. I put the washing out, and I've been down the post office. I've been a good boy this morning.
Yeah.
I've still got to do the hoovering, but bless her. She's asleep. She did a night shift last night. She did a 12-hour shift on the hospital last night, so she's asleep. So hopefully I'm not keeping her up by speaking too loudly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it gets like that sometimes, doesn't it? So the next book you touched on, saying you're focusing on which can be an incredible time for a veteran because we've both done it, haven't we? We've both transitioned from that life where essentially everything's done for you, isn't it? You've got your doctor, you've got your dentist, you've got your money coming in every week, you got the cookhouse you can feed in, you've got your clothes, and then you step out.
Yeah, I mean,
It.
I'll be honest, and I touch on this, which is what I started to write about, and it was quite funny. It was quite emotional when I started to go back into my mind as to what it was like when I did leave the army. I was medically discharged, so I was forced out of the army prematurely, and I was off work for 6 months. So when I left the army, I was out of work because I couldn't do anything with my back at the time, and I was living in a one-bedroom flat in Peacehaven. Didn't have a job. I didn't really have a girlfriend. My partner at the time had split up with me. I think she wanted to be with a soldier, it was a really dark time, and I did take to drinking. I was going down and buying a bottle of vodka, and to this day I can't drink vodka now because of my past experience. But I was going down. I was quite easily getting through a bottle of vodka, and my money was going on that. And then I just remember, I don't even remember how I got there. But one afternoon evening, I was stood on the cliffs at Beachy Head, and I don't even know how I got there. I don't remember getting there, and luckily there was an old boy there who was. I don't know if you know him, Beachy Head in Eastbourne. They actually have suicide prevention watchers and volunteers that go up there. And this guy, lovely bloke, came over. I was stood there, and he said, "Are you all right, son?" And I was only 23 at the time, and I was like, yeah. And he goes, "Do you want a cup of tea?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he just brought me over. He had a flask of tea. We sat down for about an hour and a half chatting, and that moment changed my life. It was kind of like a massive kicking the teeth for me, and it was like, and then I came home, and then I kind of like thought, Christ, what the hell was I doing? What was going through my? I still to this day cannot remember what got me there, how I got there. I was obviously been drinking, and it was a changing point in my life where I then thought, right, okay, and I need to do this and start, building a life for myself again. I'm no longer in the army. I'm no longer there. And the benefit is that after a while, I realised that the skills I learned in the army actually really benefited me in my civilian life. the graft, working. You don't argue when you're working 12, 14, 16 hours non-stop and you're only surviving on 2 hours sleep. An attribute that a lot of employers love. That you're grafting, you get your job, you do it, you work it. At the end of the day, then you finish and go home. And it's like, but I was people were, I realised the benefits of being able to do it, and then the skills I learned with leadership, I was able to then take that progress. And then when I was working in the pubs, I was able to become a successful pub manager and restaurant manager for 20-year career I had in the pubs. And it was but the transition of coming out was really dark, and I know a lot of people that have gone down that route of self-medicating, and it's I was at a time when it was very difficult for a man to ask for help. In the 90s, a man was a man. He didn't ask for help. He did, if you're struggling, if you were hitting dark times, it was always very much you're a man. You deal with it, and that was the attitude then. Whereas now it's like, you talk, be open. If you're feeling in a dark place, I always say, pick up the phone. I put a message out yesterday actually, saying, if January, because it's quite a bad time for some people, post Christmas, post New Year, back to work. The days are short. And if you feel like you need to talk, pick up the phone, message me, let me know. It's we're all there to support each other. Whereas we didn't really have that in the 90s. There wasn't that support network there. And it's
still a massive problem, isn't it? Although we have got more support networks, and clearly, those amazing volunteers at Beachy Head stop you from potentially doing, ending your life. Because
I used to, I've lived on the coast all my life, and I very nearly ended it there. It was a massive realisation as to a big wake-up call, but I didn't realise how dark a place I'd actually gotten myself into, because it was a slippery slope that I was just sliding down, and I didn't even notice I was sliding down the slope. It was I found it very difficult to talk to my family, to talk to any friends, because I didn't really all of my friends that I knew from school, they all had their own little life then. So I came out and I was very isolated. It was even though I was still back in my town that I grew up in. My friends, they were working full time. They were doing busy. They had their own lives, their own partners, girlfriends, boyfriends. And they were getting on with their lives. And it was kind of like I was just isolated in the flat on my own. And luckily, once I started getting some work, after that incident, I went down to my local pub and went in and just stood and got talking to the manager. I always remember his name was Dean, and he just said and he knew me anyway, and he goes, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Oh, I'm looking for work." And he went, "Oh, when can you start?" I was like, "Tomorrow." And he went, see you at 12 o'clock, and that was it. And it was like, and it gave me the buzz. I thought, no, I need to, I need that positive attitude to get out there and do something. And then that was it. I had a 20-year career in the pub game and restaurants, and and did very well in it. And it's, I'm kind of glad I got out when I did. I think I saw the hindsight when I feel sorry for publicans and landlords and restaurateurs at the moment. I think they're getting shafted, but I've been very, I think I got out at the right time. And it's, it was, and I put all the aspects of my military training into my job. I was very focused, very determined. I was never late for work. I was always 5 minutes before, and I still am to this day. I turn up for work and I'm 15, 20 minutes early, and everyone's like, "Why'd you get here so early?" And I went, "I'm not early." I said, "If I turn up on time, I'm late." It's and some people that just don't get that mentality. You see them rocking in to work 5-10 minutes late, going, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit late," and I'll be like, "Fucking late!" You're like, "What?" It's
like, so before I joined the army, I did what was called communication studies. So it was a mix of psychology and sociology and media studies. Really good A level, and the teacher was like psychology or whatever, and somebody turned up once late, and they walked in and they went, sorry I'm late, sir. And he was like, "No, you're not, because if you were sorry, you wouldn't have been late."
Yeah.
So That's always stuck with me because it's like,
And it always is. I mean, there's always that running. I mean, you've probably seen it thousands of times as I have. When there's a running joke about, the CO wants everyone on parade at 10 o'clock, and then by the time, and then we're all getting woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so we can be on parade at 10 o'clock, and then the CO turns up half hour late anyway.
Yeah, I remember being on a parade in Blandford. I think I've got the picture up there somewhere, and it was the biggest military picture of people in history at the time, because Blandford's a pretty big place. And I think we all had to turn up in our twos at 7 in the morning. And then I don't think the officers turned up till about 11. And it was like, why have we been here all day to get a photograph?
And then they just rock up, they go, hello there, how are you all doing?
Sit there and then we can go.
That's it. But I mean, so many things that the military, and taught me, and I see it as well. I see it in my son. He's got that attitude, that positive attitude about the way he approaches things, and it does. It's and I'm not an advocate for national service or anything like that. I think with everything that's going on in the world, it's I think it's if having a professional British forces is the way forward. If you start throwing people in that don't want to be there, then it'll be a terrible idea. But it's they want to do.
And also, it opens a can of worms, doesn't it? Because you've got people who aren't going to do it, and then what do we do with them? Do we throw them in prison? And the prisons are overcrowded. And then, as you say, me and you wanted to join the army. We were professional soldiers, and then what you have a branch of people who don't want to be in there, and then they serve for 2 years. And,
I think if they're going to go down that route, then what they should do is they should also, instead of just doing, give people the option if they want to go into the military as national service, yes, but also do things like community service, go and work down the local library, go down the local hospital, help out in the kitchens at the local hospital or in care homes. Do something for the community. So it's not that; it's more of a community service than a national service. So that everyone the community benefits, instead of it being shove them in the army or the navy, the air force, give them a rifle, and then go, there we go, that's it, thank you very much.
And then us poor professional soldiers I'd get posted to a depot like that, and then we're like, oh, this is like worse than being a basic training corporal, because
But at least they have duvets now. They don't have to do bed blocks.
I think I'm sure they still have to do it for the first 5 weeks. It can't start with duvets, because that's just like too easy, isn't it?
Yeah. And they don't get their lockers thrown out the window anymore.
I'm sure they must do. They've got to. It's part of character building. I was actually just writing about that reviewing that in my book, where you came up and the lads obviously had a bad inspection and the whole rooms were outside on the grass.
Yeah, I remember we did in basic. We had to do a full room inspection, but it had to be on the parade square. So we had to get all the beds, lockers, everything out, and then set it up on the parade square. So it was exactly the same spacings. And then the troop sergeants would walk around, throwing our kit all over the parade square. And then it's like, right, get it all back in the room. And then it'll be like you spend like half hour, 40 minutes carrying everything back in. And you go, right, we're going to do a room inspection in 10 minutes. And you're like, fuck me, kit's everywhere. No one knows where the kit is. And then you put it all together, and then they rip it up. And then we had did you have changing parades?
The good old days. I'm sure they still had that when I was a training corporal for a bit at Blandford, and we still had that, and that was in the 2000s. I guess it was 2026 now, isn't it? So lifetime away. So I think we talked about it last time, but we probably didn't record it. So who was your role model growing up?
Oh yes, we did talk about it. Do you remember Daley Thompson was my role model?
That was it.
It's because obviously I was heavily into my athletics when I was a young at school, and in the 80s, Daley Thompson was just an icon for me. You know, at the LA Games in '84, you know, he was out there, and when he won his first gold medal doing the decathlon, and he inspired me to take up athletics on all aspects, and you know, and I did end up doing decathlon as my discipline when I was at school, as well as. But and I think I said as well, the only thing I couldn't do was the pole vault. You know, it was I was absolutely awful at that. But all the other disciplines, you know, javelin, shot put, discus, you know, hurdles, you know, 1,500 meters, anything over 1,500 meters, I always struggled on. But sprinting, you know, I was really into that, and he was a massive inspiration to me. And he was a Sussex lad as well. You know, he now lives down in Brighton. So, and you know, I've seen him a couple of times when I've been out and about, and you know, and always say hello to him. He was like my biggest inspiration. I know some people say their father and that lot, but my dad wasn't the best role model for me. But yeah, Daley Thompson was my icon and my role model when I was growing up. And
he was a classic, like real life superhero, wasn't he? Because he could do everything.
Yeah, well, he used to do the. I remember he used to do the old with. I can't remember what his name was now. Steve Jackson. He used to do Super Champs and that on the telly, where they did all the different, all that sort of, you know, all the different sports activities, and yeah, he was phenomenal, and he still is. You know, he still is. Yeah. So he's such a lovely bloke as well. You know, I've had the pleasure of meeting him. They say you should never meet your heroes, but I have, and you know, he didn't disappoint. So it's.
That's good. Good to hear. That's a new one as well. So, is there anything that we should have talked about that we haven't on there?
We spoke about. We did talk about our time in cadets, didn't we? About the very poor health and safety in the 80s and 90s when we used to get away with it. But obviously, you know, but I mean, I think we didn't touch on what our experiences were as cadet instructors, on what it's like in being a cadet instructor. I mean, you're still an instructor, aren't you? So you're still volunteering. Whereas obviously, due to work commitments, I had to give it up, which was a massive blow. I really miss the cadets as an instructor, because obviously I was part of the actual adult training team as well. So I used to train all the new adults coming through with all the skills needed to be able to instruct the cadets. And it was but you know, I find from an ex-forces personnel, being ex-army and being an army cadet instructor, I was able to actually pass on the knowledge that I gained to eager sponge minds, you know, and that's what they are. They are, you know, and the cadets that you see and that we see all the time now, they want to be there, you know, and that's the difference. They want to be there, you know. It's I don't know if you do this, but whenever I used to get the parents and I used to bring them in for like the first time, I used to just say, you know, I used to make sure and say, is it okay if I can have a talk with little Timmy for 5 minutes, you know, with another adult in the room? And I would say to them, do you really want to be here, or are your parents making you come here? And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, because I'd find out, you know, if it was the parents wanted their kids to go there because they wanted to install a bit of discipline, or they wanted to give them that, I'd be like, it's probably not for you. I said, you need to want to be here. And I found that all the cadets that I used to take in, they wanted to be there. They wanted to learn. They had the attitude and the drive and the ambition that you don't see in a lot of teenagers these days. And it's and obviously the joy, sense of joy you get when you see cadets passing their APC test syllabuses, whether it be 1-star level all the way up to 4-star or master cadet. You know, when you see them progress, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling, as you know. You know, watching, you know, seeing these little 13-year-olds coming through the door, you know, with their knee high to a grasshopper, just about coming up to your chest, and then they leave at 17, 18, and they are a fully grown young adult, but they're mature for their age, you know, compared to most other teenagers. You know, they've got drive, they've got ambition, they've got the inspired to achieve mantra that the cadets passes on to them, and and I absolutely loved it. And I really do miss it, and I'm jealous of you that you're still doing it.
You should come back. I'm sure they'd have you. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I've had the same experience with the little ones coming through and leaving as strong, confident adults, and then also what it gives for the adults within the cadet force. You can get caught up with the politics and stuff, but it always brings you back down to earth when you're actually training the cadets and seeing
it's fantastic as well, because it's not just ex-forces, ex-army that are training, teaching these young kids. There's teachers, there's electricians, there's plumbers, there's people, bin men, or bin person, sorry. There's literally, there's people from all walks of life that are dedicating their time, their own personal time, because it is voluntary, and that's what a lot of people seem to forget. It is voluntary. You give up your evenings, and it's not just your evenings on the cadet nights, it's the evenings when you're planning the cadet nights, or you're planning weekend events, or you're planning and you're spending, it's a in a way, I think it is almost like a full-time job that you don't get, but you get paid through the joy and happiness that you give in the cadets. That's what it is. I do miss it, and I still speak to all the other instructors down here, and they're always like, come back. There's Jake. He actually works at the rail thing, and he's like, yes, I should come back. And I said, yeah, but I say to him, how often do you pray? And he's like, well, maybe once a month. And I think that would benefit me, because that's not enough for me. I'd want to be able to commit every time, because I was a detachment commander. You want to be able to commit your time. You want to be able to make sure that you can turn up every weeknight, turn up on every weekend you can do. And it was, but yeah, I can't commit to it, and it's a shame that I can't do it due to work, and it's in there. So because I work evenings and weekends, so it's like it goes completely against the cadet timings. But
yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I'm HQ now because I'm still the adventure training officer, but in Cheshire, ACF, so I can fit it round it. But exactly right. When I was a DC. It's the hardest job, I think. Definitely the hardest job.
Yeah.
With the most work, but probably the most rewarding, because you do get that time to influence cadets in the best possible way, so they leave with the best possible chance at life.
I mean, what I find amazing is that obviously I work on the rail, so I'm a train guard or onboard supervisor now. So I walk through the trains, and obviously I work down the south coast, so I do a lot of the west coast and the east coast. And what I find amazing sometimes is that sometimes I'll be walking through the train, and bear in mind it was 2020 when I finally left the Army Cadets. I see people walking through and they'll go, Staff Mayo. And I'm like, what? No one's called me that for 5 years. And I'm like, and there'll be a 23-year-old man or girl, and they're like, oh yeah, I was a cadet at Shoreham. I was a cadet, and they're completely changed now. And he goes, oh yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, and then they're thanking me. They're going, oh, thank you so much for all the time and effort you put in. It was really, you were such a great laugh, and you were really good. And it's you got me through my skill at arms test, and it's on there, and I'm like, or the little tricks you taught me on Fieldcraft with putting up bashers, and all that sort of stuff. He goes, I still remember it all, and and it kind of gives you that little warm, glowy fuzz in your heart, don't you? But when you see them as adults, but they recognise you. Obviously, my hairstyle hasn't changed in 5 years, so it's quite the same. But
and also they don't hide. So they don't go, oh God, it was him, I'm going to go and run up the train.
Yeah, I think the worst one I've had is when I was out clubbing one night, and then I got a tap on the shoulder, and they were like, Staff Mayo, and I'm like, who are you? Like that. No, how old are you? Like, I'm 20, and I'm like, oh my God, bloody hell, and I'm like, no, you can't talk to me, and I'm like, it's wrong. This feels very wrong.
Yeah, so anyone out there who needs something to do, civilian, or ex-military, Definitely a great hobby.
Highly recommend it, especially if you've got the time. If you've got the time and you want to really, really help benefit young adults progress in their life, then yeah, the cadets as an instructor or volunteer. Because obviously you can do civilian attached, can't you? The civilian, the CVA and CAs. As well, so you don't even have to be military trained or go to all the adult instructor training. You can go as a CA, can't you? So there's so many opportunities out there, and they are worth their weight in gold as well. Having the CAs and units, so there's so much that you can do. If anyone out there, watching this is wondering, could I do it? The only way you're going to find out is if you pick up the phone or send that email off and start the process.
Yeah, exactly, and see if it suits you. And I'm sure it would. There's a space for everybody, I think. Yeah. So, what was the podcast is called Beyond the Barracks? So, what does Beyond the Barracks mean to you?
Well, I think it's as I've kind of like we broached on earlier. It's the outside the wire. What goes on once you walk through the gates and you've demobbed yourself and you're out and about and having the life outside of the military, and it's and what we've got out there. We have got a massive community of veterans that are looking after each other, and helping each other and doing loads of great work out there. What we do is for, I know you've done a hell of a lot for charity, and and I did the same for, when I left the army, whether it be for Help for Heroes, for blind veterans. I still volunteer for the blind veterans now, so it's I go down. Luckily, they are just down the road from here, so I'm literally stone's throw from me, the blind veterans. So I did that. Obviously, got my veterans unit, Veterans Volunteer Service, the charity group that we work with young adults. So it's still like working around, with young adults, helping them develop as well. And it's but it's what you can bring outside of the barracks into the real world. That to me is what Beyond the Barracks is about. It's about that passing on and continuing on that journey. Whether even if you're not still in the green, you can still continue on that journey with those around you.
Yeah, I love that. So it's about utilising your skills to still do good.
Yeah, and and I think nearly all veterans, I say most, they do. They're always up for raising money for charity. They're always up for pushing themselves and doing something beyond their, capabilities, just to, for think. And it's also helping other veterans as well. I know Chris Finch. I think you've done his podcast, and you were on the other end of it the other day, which I watched.
Yeah.
He, with all the work that him and Tim are doing with the Veterans for Veterans. There's so many different organisations out there, and these small pocket organisations that are really helping benefit veterans now. You've got the big organisations, the thing, but I find they've become too mainstream now and too diluted with with what goes on. But there's all what the smaller veteran communities are doing for their area, their communities, and the other veterans is amazing work out there. We should all tip our hat to each other and give ourselves all a pat on the back because we're all doing a grand job.
Yeah, definitely. So, where can we find your book then if people want to use it?
They are both on Amazon. If you've got Amazon Kindle, they're both on ebook, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon paperback. And also, if you on TikTok, you can also find them on TikTok Shop because I started selling them on TikTok Shop privately as well. I can send you the links if you want to use those, or put them in there. I can get them sent off for you. But or if anyone wants to direct message me. If I give you you've got my email, and we can do that. Are we there?
Yeah, sorry. Jinxed. We are jinxed.
Did the doorbell ring? I was like, are we there? Are you there? What are we doing?
I don't know. Yeah. No, we'll be all right. Don't know what happened then.
But yeah.
On
Sorry,
the other side now.
I'll give them again. You know, they've got The Lost Hero,
Yeah.
which is just a short novella, quick read. You could probably read it in a day, but it's a very deep and meaningful story of courage, loss, and remembrance. And then my second book is obviously Fault Line, which is following the lead, Sarah Clark, on her humanitarian mission and obviously an escape and evasion and going on there. There's a few twists in there as well. A little bit of love interest as well, but that's in there. I did throw a little bit of romance in there.
Romance novels coming.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great catching up again. And now you've got another book. It was perfect. So we'll have to get you on for the third book. So yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to the trilogy landing soon.
Yes, I've got 5 in my head. Well, I've got 2 that I've done, third I'm in, and there's 2 more to go after that. So it's then I've kind of got the idea that the whole Clark family legacy all kind of gets together in one big finale, and then there's a big finale book where it all kind of comes together. And then I've got a few little in my head. I've got a few like little offsprings. As I said earlier on, you know, my granddad was in World War II. My great granddad was in World War One. So I kind of like thinking, can I, you know, go down that thing? They've been done before, so it's kind of I'm in an ahhing about it. But it's you know, I like to do things a little bit differently. But it's I don't do things by convention.
No, none of us do, I don't think.
But anyway, no, it's been lovely chatting and seeing you again, Gina. And
you too.
From me to you, keep doing and continuing the great work you're doing. I'm so proud of you, and I think you should be as well. So it's been lovely chatting with you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, and likewise. Right, I'll hopefully this has worked this time. See you later.
Watch this space.